Thank you so much for doing this, Mr. President. We know you have many, many things to deal with, and we appreciate your taking time out of your schedule. We've known each other for a while, and so I think I will begin with a very frank question, which is on everyone's mind. The Ukrainian counteroffensive seems to be going more slowly and has many more difficulties than people might have anticipated. Can you tell us from your perspective why you think these difficulties are, why do you face these difficulties, and what do you need to try to overcome them?
Thank you for the question. Really a very relevant one. I would just like to draw your attention to the change of rhetorics worldwide, and I'm glad to hear that. Now we're discussing the counteroffensive in Ukraine. Ukraine is not backtracking, but progressively liberates its territories, which is very important. We did have plans to start it in spring, but we didn't because, frankly, we had not enough munitions and armaments and not enough brigades properly trained in these weapons. Still more that the training missions were held outside Ukraine, but still we started, and this is important. And because we started it a bit later on, it can be said, and it will be shared truth, understood by all the experts, that it provided Russia with time to mine all our lands and build several lines of defense. And definitely they had even more time than they needed. Because of that, they built more of those lines. And really, they had a lot of mines on our fields. Because of that, a slower pace of our counteroffensive actions. We didn't want to lose our people, our personnel, and our servicemen didn't want to lose equipment because of that. Yes, I do understand that it's always better to see victory comes sooner. This is what we also want. But the question is the price of this victory. So let us not throw people under tanks literally. Let us plan our counteroffensive as our analysts, our intelligence suggests, and some of our residential areas have been liberated already. So I do believe in our victory.
President Zelensky, I wonder what you can tell us about what is going on in the Russian army. Your troops are encountering them. And I'm wondering, given what we saw happen in Russia over the last few weeks, do you notice that the Wagner forces are not confronting you on the battlefield, or are they back? Is there a change in Russian morale? Are you noticing something about the Russian army as a consequence of the Prigozhin attempted mutiny?
I think we can understand what is happening to the strength of the Russian army, or rather the lack of motivation, when we see what is happening to the Russian society. And something like that has been happening on the battlefield. They're demotivated. You could see that Putin lost the strength of the vertical of his power. And the steps made by Prigozhin clearly attest to that. Same is happening in the army. In Russia, with their citizens, they don't have freedom. And because of that, they are demotivated to the most. They don't see victories in civil life, in military activities, and even those who support this policy of war and aggression of President Putin. I think this percentage is going down. We did analyze the steps by Prigozhin. We talked about that with partners. And I would say that 40, maybe 45% of Russian Federation's regions in principle supported the steps and the rhetoric of Prigozhin. in spite of him being a representative of terrorists or even the leader of terrorists himself, you can still see that even in that, there is a split in the society. There is no unity in Russia now. And this is why we need to act.
It's been a week full of news out of Russia and Ukraine. On Monday, Russia announced that it would pull out of a grain deal that allowed Ukraine to export its main crops to much of the world. It came hours after a series of explosions hit the Kerch Bridge, linking Russia to Crimea. The Russia denied the decision was related to the attack. It is the only connector between the two, so it is a crucial piece of infrastructure for Russia. Ukraine took responsibility for the attack. Afterward, Russia bombarded major Ukrainian cities along the Black Sea. More now of my interview with President Zelensky. Is it a short-term objective of yours to destroy that bridge completely? And do you believe that you will be able to reclaim all of Crimea as part of this counteroffensive?
The objective is to reclaim the whole of the Crimea because it's our sovereign territory. This is not just a logistical route. This is the route used to speed the war with ammunition, and this has been done on a daily basis. And it militarizes the Crimean Peninsula. For us, this is understandably an enemy facility built outside the law, outside the international laws and all applicable norms. So understandably, this is our objective. And any objective, any target that is bringing war, not peace, has to be neutralized.
In retaliation, it seems, the Russians have pulled out of the grain agreement. They are bombing granaries in Odessa. It's becoming much harder to send and sell Ukrainian agricultural products on world markets. Is there any solution? Have you found any way to get Ukrainian grain out now that the Russians have pulled out of the grain deal?
First of all, I think it would be a mistake to compare those two situations. These were artificially tied informationally by the Russian Federation. Let me explain it to you. From the beginning of the signing of these agreements, Russia would constantly, regularly block the corridor. There were vessels idling at sea, there were queues, long queues. Some would last for 2-3 weeks, up to 30 vessels sitting there, unable to either enter or exit our ports. Russia did everything to slow down the process and artificially dump the prices on the world grains markets. Much in the same vein as they did with energy sources. So nothing new for us here. Later on, they took this situation around the Crimean Bridge, using it just as an example. Just believe me, if you follow the public messages, you will clearly see it has been a scheduled approach. If not the Crimean Bridge, they would find another example, another reason to do it. This is well in the meaning of them. In spite of that, we do look for ways. We talked to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Right before this meeting with you, I had a talk with President Erdogan to discuss the crisis. We do see certain ways of going out of it. If we succeed, if Erdogan succeeds, if he is even stronger, I think everything will check okay. Anyway, everyone has to remember, the Black Sea is the sea of all the nations of ours. This is not the sea of the Russian Federation. There is Ukraine, Turkey, Romania, Bulgaria, And we are talking to all the countries in the Black Sea region. And we have very substantial, pragmatic relations, humane and legal relations. And by the way, this is very important. We have legal relations with everyone but for Russia, because they think that this is their own sea.